Hello, and welcome to tonight's presentation of League of Women Voters annual unit meeting. It's not our annual meeting, that's next month. I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. I'm Kate Ham, and I'm the Virtual Advocacy Chair here at League of Women Voters. I am super excited to share with you two incredible videos tonight, as well as a follow-up with the incredible Dr. Brian Amos from Wichita State. I'm extremely excited to talk about redistricting, gerrymandering, and all of those different components that come with it. It has been a hot topic lately, especially since the census data is coming out today or tomorrow. It's really exciting. So I am very excited to share with you all of this really interesting and really impactful information this evening. But first, like we do every time, I always want to start with our DEI moment, our moment for diversity, equity, and inclusion. One thing I do want to let you know tonight, if you are looking for closed captioning or would like some assistance with that, I will put in the comments these instructions as well. Go ahead, and while you are on YouTube, there is some options where it says that you are able to put on closed captioning that is live. Usually it's going to be at the bottom, right by that bar where it kind of tells you where we are along the video progression. And there should be a button that says CC. Go ahead and click that and turn that on if that is something you desire. 24 hours after this video is posted, we will also have closed captioning available for you. We will make sure that and work very hard that we will always have this available so that we can make sure people of all abilities are able to access our broadcasts. Tonight, I had the fortunate opportunity to interview and really get to experience Representative Hoswood, Christina Hoswood from District 10, which is up just outside of Lawrence, as a representative in the Kansas State Legislature. She is incredible. And her and Representative Dr. Ponka Victors from here in our hometown of Wichita introduced a bill on missing Indigenous persons in the state of Kansas, and finding ways in being able to set people up for success to be found and be able to be found quickly and safely and alive here. I'm very excited to share this video with you today. We planned on having only a 5-minute video for this, so I edited our conversation down to 5 minutes. But the incredible thing is we had a 30-minute conversation that I don't want anybody to miss out on. So while you will only see a snippet of our conversation today, the whole 25-minute video will be published in the coming weeks to our social media platforms here on YouTube and to our Facebook. I'm very excited about this initiative because it was such an incredible conversation that I was so fortunate to be a part of. So please join me as we get to see more of Representative Hoswood and her work with this bill.
Our DEI moment today, we are connecting with Kansas House Representative Christina Hoswood. She made history on January 11th when she was sworn into the Kansas legislature. She represents District 10, which includes kind of part of Lawrence, a lot of that area, and you're 26 years old, which is phenomenal to see you in this arena at such a wonderful young age. So one of your first actions after taking office was co-sponsoring House Bill 2008, which I think it's kind of crazy that you are just started and co-sponsored a bill already. And you have co-sponsored it with Representative Ponka Victors. It's not law yet, but tell us more about this and how you guys came together to create this movement around this bill.
Yeah, thank you so much for this question. I'm so glad to be here today. Unfortunately, I turned 27 over the weekend.
Darn it! Man, happy belated birthday, though.
Thank you. But yeah, with HB 2008, the Missing American Indigenous Peoples Bill, it's really a unique story because this is Representative Dr. Ponkawee's bill. So she did a lot of the legwork that, because it was introduced in 2020. And also when she first did the press release, I was still in grad school at KU Med, and it was really a time where I wanted to get more involved in my state politics. So I missed class one morning to go see this press release because someone who was interested in politics, I'm the type of person who wants to go in person and see the action happen. I want to be in the room and really see what's going on. So I went over there and she asked a lot of Indigenous folks to wear red So I did something that I think it's kind of getting normalized in Indigenous cultures, like wearing one of our traditional skirts mixed with a modern like kind of work attire. So a little bit per what do you say, like office professional looking. So I did that outfit, and it was the first time I got to meet Representative Dr. Victors, and I was just coming off of an internship in DC where I worked with the National Council of Urban Indian Health on missing or indigenous peoples, because oftentimes this conversation is to not take away from, but it's a lot about the reservations and tribal nations of policymaking. And I believe like 70% of us live off of reservations. Like myself, I'm Navajo, Diné, and my reservation is in the Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado area. So when we make tribal policies, it's not really benefiting me or making my life better when it's towards the Navajo Nation. And then even here in Kansas, so a lot of indigenous peoples work and live in Lawrence, Kansas City, Topeka, and Wichita. I believe are the most populated of urban indigenous folks. So I was asking her, how can we make sure that this bill really expands its efforts past reservation boundaries and make sure that we get into the urban area? So that's how we first connected. And then unfortunately with that, it's a really good bill, but COVID hit and it cut the session short last year. So I believe it died on the Senate side. I think in one of the committees, I'm not exactly too sure. But you know, from there to now, Representative Dr. Victors actually recruited me to run for the seat. She was, you know, I think this is how she got her PhD too, is getting a lot more Indigenous folks elected into office. So it was really great to meet her. And for her to ask me to be a part of this bill was extreme honor. It caught me by surprise as well. And it really taught me the process of making policy in Topeka. I think, and it was really different too, because the public is not able to go into the state house now. So pretty much it's just legislators and lobbyists and staff. So the only people who really can advocate on policy is the legislatures and the lobbyists. So a big part of this whole state government is having the people there and having the people and constituents meet with their legislators. And I've seen too, people have some difficulties even figuring out who their legislator are. Like sometimes we'll get people who email like all of us. And so it's really, I understand, like if you can't go to the building, it's so hard to figure out who's your state rep and who's your state senator. It's totally confusing. I understand. So that part of the aspect I think was, I think I personally haven't experienced as a state legislator, so it's my first year, but I think that would have been a really great part of it. But this year we were lucky enough to have it, go through the process. I believe it got signed by the governor about 2 weeks ago in the beginning of April, and it will go into statute, I believe at the end of July, June or July, one of those days. So this is Representative Dr. Punkawee's bill. I was just so lucky for her to ask me to help with the process of it. It was also a good teaching moment for me and getting the tribes together.
Let's say one of our listeners today and one of our viewers has figured out, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm super passionate about this. I'd love to know more. How can people get in contact with you if they have questions for you or they want to kind of learn more of how to be a part of initiatives such as the House Bill 2008?
So I think for the Wichita area, y'all can email and call Representative Dr. Punkwee Victors. That's probably the first step. Second of all, I'm more than happy to help too. So you can also email me, christina.haswood@house.ks.gov. I also have my social media pages. They're all at Haswood for FOR Kansas KS. So those are some of the ways I like to help advocate and bring transparency to the community. If you want to learn more about missing murdered Indigenous women and peoples, I think a quick Google search would be great. And looking at other organizations like the Urban Health Institute, they have a really great report. Abigail Echohawk, I believe, is the director of that organization, and she is a phenomenal trailblazing Indigenous researcher. And she, really like decolonizing data is one of her things and of the organization.
Man, I know that was super short. I know, because I was enthralled and I was there for the conversation. And so I know that was a super short video talking a little bit about her involvement in the Kansas legislature, as well as her incredible story of how she got there and how us as Wichitans and then the surrounding area were able to help with that by electing Representative Dr. Ponkawi Victors. So such an incredible story, and I'm excited for you to be able to see the entire video in the next coming days. If you have more questions or you'd like to connect with Representative Hoswood, please feel free to reach out to her at christina.hoswood@houseks.gov. You are also able to follow her on any of her social media platforms at Hoswood for KS. I follow her on TikTok, and she is so cool. So feel free to, one, contact her if you have questions, but two, if you want to talk policy and your ways to impact, I highly suggest reaching out to Dr. Ponkawi Victors. She is a representative based out of here in Wichita. And like Representative Christina Hoswood said, it's so important to connect with people that you are a part of their constituency and you're from their region. So I know she would love to have your assistance. Now it comes to the time what everybody is waiting for. I'm super excited to show you the video that is all about redistricting, called A Line in the Street. This movie tells you about the citizens, activists, and the legislature as they fight for redistricting reform in Pennsylvania, one of the most heavily gerrymandered states in the country. It's compelling and enthralling, and the film spotlights a groundbreaking redistricting lawsuit arguing that the state legislature has violated their own state constitution. It's co-produced by Robert Millman and Rachel Millman. Line in a Street tells a unique story about the heroes and the villains struggling to define the meaning of representative democracy. And I hope you enjoyed the show going on in the background with my cat as I read that. Man, having events from home, how exciting. Tonight we plan to have Robert Millman with us, but unfortunately, due to some unforeseen circumstances, he is unable to join us this evening. But we will be able to see his story through this video. So sit back, relax, grab a drink or a snack, and enjoy this 30-minute video.
Partisan redistricting, or gerrymandering, is about fractions, percentages. These coins represent voters in an evenly divided state, 50 dimes, 50 pennies. These 100 coins elect 10 representatives. That means each voting district must contain 10 coins. Now, real people don't live in neat rows, so let's mix them up. Okay, this is our hypothetical evenly divided state. Let's see what happens if the dimes draw the maps. 10 coins in each district. For the dimes, first thing we do is pack the pennies. Give them 2 safe districts, but pack them solid. The remaining 8 districts are won by the dimes, by smaller but still comfortable margins. The dimes win 8 districts, and the pennies win 2. The dimes overwhelmingly control the legislature. Of course, if the pennies drew the district lines, the opposite would be true. Let's rig it for the pennies. For the pennies, we follow the same pack and crack strategy. Pack the dimes into 2 safe districts and crack the remaining 8 districts to win by the same margin, 8-2. Well, now that we've destroyed democracy, let's consider what this map would look like if the districts were drawn for compactness and keeping communities of interest together. You get evenly divided districts in an evenly divided state. Some go heavily dime, some go penny, but that's to be expected. People live where they live, and that is what democracy is about. It's not about party bosses rigging election districts so they can fix the election results.
Yeah, my name's Monica von Dobenek. I live in South Londonderry Township in Lebanon County. I'm here because I think, one person, one vote is the basis of our whole system of government, and it has been horribly twisted through this gerrymandering where our representatives pick their voters rather than the other way around. I think anybody who looks at the maps can see how egregious it has become.
We, in the General Assembly, get the honor once every decade to cast a vote on congressional redistricting.
So this process has been a very public process, a very open process, and one in which our doors have been open to receive input throughout the year. And the end product that we were shooting for, and that is to have a map that would ultimately be constitutional, legal, and fair, and I believe that's what we've produced here today.
This is how the bill originally was introduced in the legislature in September of 2011. It just says the first district is composed of a portion of this Commonwealth. The second district is composed of a portion of this Commonwealth. They inserted the language at the last day. Here's what the actual final bill looks like. It's just page after page of lists of counties and wards and divisions.
The actual language of the districts was not dropped in until 9 in the morning, so the congressional redistricting plan was available for the legislators to see, for the press to see, for the people of Pennsylvania to see for only 14 hours before it came up for a final vote in the state Senate.
And I think this plan clearly meets constitutional and statutory obligations to reflect one person, one vote, and to send our congressional representatives to Washington, D.C.
If you ask the Republican leadership, have they complied with one person, one vote? They insist that they have. What would you say to that point of view?
I would say they're wrong. And I think anybody who looks at the map, that they devised could see that. There are places where the maps are like one house wide.
Most famous of that is the 7th Congressional District, the Goofy Kicking Donald Duck District. Just to highlight some of the absurdities in that, it has these big areas that are connected by these tiny, narrow isthmuses, and one of them is a place called Creed's Seafood and Steaks. So the 7th District basically includes just that building and its parking lot.
This map is absolutely one person, one vote. 705,687 in 5 districts and 705,688 in 13 districts.
We have 18 congressional districts, and the map is drawn in such a way that 13 out of the 18 are held by Republican members of Congress, no matter what the election looks like statewide. So there are 5 districts that are held by Democrats, and as you'll see, the Democrats win these districts by big margins, 85%, 91%, so the 2nd Congressional District, Congressman Evans' district, is regularly won by something like a 90-10 margin by Democrats because they've been designed to be so clustered into that district. Statewide vote share, Democrats got 50.8% of the votes statewide in congressional races in 2012, 50.8% of the votes, but they only got 5 out of 18 seats, which I think is about 28% of the seats in our congressional delegation.
We are suing under the Pennsylvania Constitution, saying that the current maps violate free expression and association claims. They violate the equal protection guarantees under the Pennsylvania Constitution and the free and equal clause under the Pennsylvania Constitution. We're arguing that in order to have a fair process, partisan records, party affiliation can't be part of the districting process.
So this is a lawsuit brought on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania and 18 individual voters, and it challenges Pennsylvania's congressional plan, our map for congressional districts, under the Pennsylvania Constitution. Pennsylvania has 18 congressional districts, and it's a very closely divided state on partisan lines. So you might expect that our congressional delegation would have, say, 9 Democrats and 9 Republicans, or maybe 10 and 8, but that's never how it works. The plan was engineered so that 13 Republicans would always win. So one example of this is Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, which is part of the western suburbs of Philadelphia. It has about 800,000 people, which is to say it has about the right number of people to have one member of Congress representing Montgomery County. Instead, the maps were drawn in such a way that Montgomery County is divided among 5 different congressional districts, and not one of those 5 representatives lives in Montgomery County. So it's the 3rd biggest county in Pennsylvania. It has its own distinct political needs and wishes, yet it is pretty much not represented at all in Congress the way this map has been drawn.
Do you solemnly swear that you will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth?
And the Constitution of this Commonwealth.
If so, say, I do. Congratulations.
When elected officials are sworn in, they swear to uphold the state constitution. Just look at what they are doing. Do they follow what the Constitution requires, which is that they are compact and contiguous? And our argument would be that they absolutely do not.
My name is Mimi McKenzie. I'm the legal director for the Public Interest Law Center. So today we urge the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to uphold and protect the freedoms in our state constitution and return elections to the people. I want to introduce our co-counsel from Arnold and Porter Case Schuler, David Gersh.
There came a moment in response to questioning from the justices when Speaker Turzai's lawyer came out and admitted that, in fact, this was a purely political exercise, that they knew how to identify the Democratic voters, that they did it, and the map was drawn based on that fact. And they made the claim, they took the position that there should be no limits whatsoever on how partisan the districts could be.
In the day's other news, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court threw out the state's congressional map. It ruled that districts had been so heavily gerrymandered to benefit Republicans that it violated the state's constitution. The court gave the Republican-led legislature until February 9th to fashion a replacement. But GOP leaders said that they would appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court.
The drawing of congressional lines, that's in the federal constitution. We think it was a completely partisan, ultimate gerrymander. This was and is a usurpation of democracy that is put in the hands of legislators.
Would you be okay with the court's decision if they had ruled the map unconstitutional but given you more time, say?
No.
Can you go into that a little bit?
Yes, because they don't have the power to do that. This is nothing short of alarming. This is really inappropriate.
I think it's really important for everyone to understand there is no constitutional right to an unconstitutional map. And so let's make no mistake, they're benefiting from the way the lines they're drawn right now, but there's no right to hold on to a map that's unconstitutional.
So before we move on, there's a couple of things I think should be mentioned. There are congressional district maps, there are House representative maps, and there are state Senate maps. So there's 3 sets of maps. The other issue is that in January 2018, the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court ruled the congressional district maps an illegal gerrymander and ruled that new maps had to be drawn immediately. But those maps are only congressional maps. They did not order new maps for state senators or state representatives. The third issue is the difference between a lawsuit and legislative reform.
Our bill is about the future. Our bill is about what's going to happen in 2021, 2031, 2041, and beyond. The court case was only dealing with the congressional districts. It did not alter the state house or state senate districts that we've had since 2011. And secondly, it changed the congressional map, but it did not change the process that we use to draw those maps. And our effort, with broad bipartisan support, is to change that so that an independent citizens commission is in charge of redistricting the next time around and for decades thereafter.
Let me officially welcome folks here to Church of the Good Samaritan. We're thrilled to be hosting this event. With that, I'm going to hand the mic over to Dr. Carol Cunningham.
Let me say again, this is a nonpartisan discussion. Both parties do this. The Democrats did a really good job with their tools available in Pennsylvania in 1991. In 2001, the Republicans said, oh, really? And they did an even better job. And if you go across Pennsylvania, especially our House districts, you'll see all of our small cities or denser towns split. They're cracked out. So here, this is Beaver Falls. It's been split into 4 different House districts. And look at the one that goes actually through Beaver Falls and then just keeps going. That was very, very carefully done to make sure that community has no voice. That's cracking. This is a picture of Allentown. That's another city that ties with Reading as being one of the most underfunded school districts in the country. So Allentown is divided into 3 House districts. It ought to have somebody who is thinking only about Allentown. Instead, it's a piece, and the least important piece of 3 districts. In our area, in my area, here in Chester County area, we have lots of examples of communities that are just cracked right out, divided up. Phoenixville is one, Norristown is one, Westchester is another. I could go on a long time to tell you the ways that this impacts policy. I'll give you one more specific example and then a kind of general point about this. Lead poisoning. We've all heard about Flint, Michigan, and the lead poisoning in the water. I don't know if you know, but there are 18 cities in Pennsylvania that have far worse lead poisoning than Flint, Michigan, because these are cities with older housing and older buildings, and they're all painted with lead paint, and every time you open a window or a door, there's lead dispersed into the air. So we have 18 cities, far worse. You can see there's a kind of a little faint blue line there. Do you see it? That's Flint. That's how the lead poisoning in Flint. We are far, far worse than that. But for comparison, the lead exposure rate in Flint is 3.21%, which is toxic. In York, it's 12.41. Lebanon, it's 12.91. If you could see this well, you'd see that all of these cities have at least 4 times the level of lead exposure that Flint does. It's difficult to compare Pennsylvania as a state, though, because we don't have mandatory testing. Most states do. And you would think a state where this has turned out to be a serious problem would immediately, the legislature would say, we need to do mandatory testing of children at these ages so we can catch this early and make sure it's remediated. Pennsylvania has not done that.
I'm from Monroe County.
I'm from North Catasauqua.
And I'm from Coopersburg, Pennsylvania.
I'm on the bus because I'm tired of my state representatives and my state senators being held accountable to their party leaders as opposed to the citizens of Pennsylvania.
Fair District's PA from Berks County, we're going to Representative Turzai, the Speaker of the House. We're going to his office. Any future redistricting bills need to go to another committee other than the House Government Committee, where they will be stopped or eviscerated.
This meeting of the House State Government Committee is called to order. We've had a lot of lobbying of my office, of my colleagues. House Bill 722 sets up an unaccountable commission of citizens not elected by their fellow citizens, but ultimately appointed. And I think the best way to make sure we have a citizens actually being the ones redrawing, citizens who are held accountable to their fellow citizens who elect them to office, is to totally gut and replace this bill with the amendment that is now before us. I think if you truly want this done by the citizens, then I think the best way is to make sure those citizens are elected, not appointed.
This process is broken. If you need any greater testament, look at what will happen by 11 a.m. today.
Mr. Chairman, the amendment passes 15-11.
Thank you, Representative Hill. The bill is amended. We'll go over for the day. Motion adjourned by...
The people have the right to alter and reform. The people have the right to alter and reform. The people have the right to alter and reform.
Pennsylvania Constitution says that, promises that, and yet that right has been denied us here in this House again and again and again. Gerrymandering undermines accountable government, and we are gathered here to make clear that that must change.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Eric Rowe, and I'm the proud Republican prime sponsor of House Bill 722. Just like freedom, democracy is a fragile thing, and it must be fought for and protected, and that is what we're going to do with an independent redistricting commission.
Good afternoon. I'm Tim Stevens, Chairman and CEO of BPEP, the Black Political Empowerment Project. The mission of BPEP is to encourage African Americans to vote in each and every election. However, we encourage all people to vote in each and every election.
You know what to do. Pass SB 22. You know what to do. Pass SB 22. You know what to do. Pass SB 22. You know what to do. Pass SB 22.
On June 25th, 2018, the Gerrymander Reform Bill, SB 22, finally came to the floor of the Pennsylvania House.
The Sergeant at Arms will open the doors of the House. We have some amendments in front of us. The amendment passes. The amendment passes.
There's quite a few amendments there. Could we take mine one at a time?
All those in favor of the amendment will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote.
By the end of the day, more than 500 amendments were piled on top of the bill by both Democratic and Republican legislators.
So we are not adjourned at this time, but we will be back in session at 1 p.m.
The next day, the House reconvened but did not take up SB 22.
So members, if you could, please take your seats, then we're going to go into some votes. At this time, the House is going to stand in recess until call of the chair. We are not going to be announcing a specific return date. There are no further votes. However, I would like to just make a couple of announcements, please.
When the House abruptly ended session on June 26th, the legislature once again blocked gerrymander reform for the State House, State Senate, and congressional delegation. But despite their inaction, the state Supreme Court decision took effect.
This is the new Pennsylvania map that was drawn after the Supreme Court ruled the prior map to be unconstitutional. It looks like Montgomery County is pretty much intact. You know, there may be some parts of Montgomery County that fall into a different district. It looks like up here it does. Berks County, where I live, is this right here. I am still within the 6th congressional district, but there's a major change to this map that I'm happy for. I'm actually in the same congressional district as the city of Reading. If you look at the old map, you can see the district that I live in stretches from Chester County up through Montgomery County, all the way across the midsection of Berks County, conveniently cutting out the city of Reading, which has about 88,000 citizens. That's an absurd gerrymander. So and you said that was Turzai who said that?
We think it was a completely partisan, ultimate gerrymander.
For that statement to be made with a straight face is absolutely ludicrous, that the new map is the ultimate partisan gerrymandering when you look at this monstrosity that was put through the legislature in 2011.
So the old map, stretched 120 miles from the PA-Ohio border into the Laurel Highlands of Pennsylvania. It covered 6 counties, okay, 5 of which were split in some way. The new map is one geographically condensed area, which is southwestern Pennsylvania. It comprises of 4 counties and it only splits 1 out of those 4 counties.
It's terrific. It's a wonderful map. It meets all this criteria. It's not just their job to have the certain number of people. It's to have fair and equal treatment, a fair vote, and to have compact and contiguous district. It's right in the Constitution.
Pennsylvania's redrawn 2018 congressional district map, the result of the League of Women Voters PA lawsuit, followed guidelines ordered by the court. Do not divide any county, city, incorporated town, borough, township, or ward except where necessary to ensure equality of population. Let the simplicity and clarity of those words sink in for a moment, because the Republican majority refused to comply with the court's order.
This was and is a usurpation of democracy that is put in the hands of legislators.
This is a usurpation of the sovereign power of the legislature under the Pennsylvania Constitution.
The congressional redistricting that is the prerogative of the state legislature to determine, not the state courts.
Would you be okay with the court's decision if they had ruled the map unconstitutional but given you more time, say?
No.
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 Can you go into that a little bit?
Yes, because they don't have the power to do that. This is nothing short of alarming. This is really inappropriate.
Ultimately, a special master was assigned by the court to redraw the congressional district map. For comparison, the old map split 28 Pennsylvania counties and 68 municipalities. The new map splits 13 counties and only 19 municipalities. The upshot? In the 2018 congressional election, Pennsylvania's delegation went from a gerrymandered 13-5 Republican-Democrat split to a 9-9 split, which mirrors the state's electorate. Make no mistake, this is a landmark case. It's the first time ever a Supreme Court, state or federal, has struck down a redistricting map on the grounds that general constitutional principles prohibit partisan gerrymandering. But as good as this ruling and the new map is, it's a limited victory. Pennsylvania's Senate and House legislative districts are as gerrymandered as ever. 2018 saw a record-breaking voter turnout, but 1/3 of voters did not have a choice for their state legislators. More than 1/3 of Pennsylvania House and Senate incumbents ran unopposed in the general election. Gerrymandering effectively insulates the people from their politicians and politicians from the public. And if nothing changes, legislative leaders will begin redrawing congressional, Senate, and House district maps again in 2021. Change is not easy, and there are few simple answers, but representative democracy really is at stake, and you either believe in it or you don't.
Do you solemnly swear that you will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of this Commonwealth? If so, say, I do.
A lot of times when I've talked to people about changing the Constitution, I've said the Constitution is not the problem. It's people raising their hand like we do, swear to uphold and defend it, and then they don't. They're the problem. It's people raising their hand like we do, swear to uphold and defend it, and then they don't. They're the problem.
We want people's votes to actually mean something. We want people to feel that they actually have an opportunity to help determine who represents them, not that the incumbents, regardless of party, determine who their voters are. Am I right about it? We want to see the end of divisive and continuing partisan bickering, which is tearing our Commonwealth apart and tearing our nation apart. looks like. This is right. Democracy looks like. This is what 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 democracy looks like.
No one ever said it was going to be easy to amend the Pennsylvania Constitution. It's a really uphill fight, and it's a fundamental challenge anytime you're trying to change the way elections happen. If the people who need to make the decision are the people who benefit from the status quo, and if that's not what an incumbent is, then I don't know what an incumbent is. An incumbent is someone who benefits from the status quo, and if you're asking people like that to change the rules of the game, you're always going to be fighting an uphill fight. We don't think that minor tinkering with the rules, with the procedures for drawing maps, is going to solve the problem. There needs to be a bigger change than that. Otherwise, there's going to have to be litigation every decade. We're happy to keep bringing those cases if that's what's required.
Wow. I thought I knew a lot about what redistricting was. I thought I knew, just in general, how politicians and legislators all interacted with each other to create the districting maps and what that looked like. But in literally the last time we had a redistricting, these things occurred. I am so excited to introduce our two guests today. I'm going to bring them on the screen now. So the two people that we have with us is one, the producer himself, Mr. Robert Millman. I'm so excited you are here. We were excited that you were able to join us. And then the second person that we have with us tonight is Dr. Brian Amos. Dr. Amos is a part of the political science department at Wichita State. He researches and explores the impact of geography on elections with a primary focus on legislative redistricting. Look at this. He's gotten to do a lot of work in Florida, in Maryland, and has been an assistant to the expert witness in cases about voter ID laws, early voting access, polling place changes. Like, he's done pretty much a little bit of everything. He is a principal co-investigator of voting as a part of the voting and election science team. So really, we have two huge experts here that just kind of know so much about redistricting and have gotten to experience and really learn a lot. So welcome. We are so glad that you both are here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, first, I want to kind of just ask a question first to Mr. Millman. Just a question for you. What inspired you to create this incredible film?
The simplest answer would be patriotism. But well, I guess two things is that I took the time to read the New York State Constitution and the United States Constitution, and I was kind of surprised to find that only one of them has an individual right to vote. So it has to do with the way that laws have our Constitution evolved. And, people tend to not regard their state constitution as having a lot of importance, but that's where your individual right to vote actually exists, unless HR 1 passes. The other issue is that when I read in the New York Times on, I think it was June 16th, that the Pennsylvania case was being brought based exclusively on the state constitution, I said, well, that's my story. I'm in. And my daughter and I, who is my co-producer, who raised our shoestring budget through Indiegogo, went to Pennsylvania. I don't know. I kind of lost track, and we just followed it. And this is. I really like the 30-minute version because it's pared down, but of course there's a lot of stuff that has been cut out. But I think it makes the point, and I guess if I can just go on to make sort of my general point that I think is really important about the nature of gerrymandering is that, for one thing, it is foundational to everything a state legislature does, which includes all manner of ballot access. And unlike any other form of vote suppression, there's no bad faith fiction they can hide behind. By definition, they are sorting and selecting voters. So although people tend to have the view that it can't be fixed, in my opinion, it actually is more vulnerable than any other form of voter suppression because it so blatantly violates basic state constitutional rights.
That is, it's incredible just to kind of, we think about these things, when we hear stuff like, oh yeah, it should be fair. And like, we get fired up in a moment, but to hear you break it down in such a way that shares that you're like breaking state constitutional rights. Like sometimes I don't think we realize that those things are in place to protect us. And it's incredible. Absolutely fascinating. Dr. Amos, you do a lot of work in this. I know you got to watch incredible how Pennsylvania came to this and kind of worked through it in 2011 up to 2018. Like it was a long process. And the census data came out at 3 p.m. today. So we know that people are going to start working on it. How have things changed? How have things stayed the same? What do you think the environment around redistricting is like now?
Well, I really enjoyed this film. I hadn't seen it before. And I think it's hitting on a really important point. So up till, I guess, a year or two ago, a lot of reformers had focused on federal courts, trying to kind of hit that home run case of getting redistricting guidelines to apply at the federal level. Well, we had a Supreme Court case, Rucho versus Common Cause, which essentially the SCOTUS said, we're going to not weigh in on this at all. So the new battleground now is state courts, which is why, Pennsylvania was one of the first states really to, I worked on the Florida case with the League of Women Voters in Florida. They had explicitly passed a ban on gerrymandering there, but Pennsylvania is the first case where kind of that implicit, free and equal elections, we should be reading into that, that says no to gerrymandering. And they're the first ones to get that decision and to have the consequences of having better maps because of it. So again, that's going to be a major shift after the census here is we're going state by state now instead of trying to get this at federal court level. And obviously COVID has had a huge impact in the world, but the census data that's coming out today should have been out by January 1st, and we need more data to come out. That'll be in August or September. So everything's getting compressed a bit too. So that's another change that's going to affect everybody.
So when it comes to things, I know, and you both are just really fantastic and have had experience and really invested in how people connect with their legislature around these topics of redistricting and gerrymandering, especially now during COVID, which I know you might not have good answers for because heck, none of us do when it comes to COVID, but what is a way for people to interact and connect with their legislature to stand up for fair maps for the people?
For what it's worth, I've been in a couple of uphill fights against rigged systems, and I think, at least to my way of thinking, you have to keep your message really simple. And to me, the message that I tried to really work is that they are required by their oath of office, by the state constitution, to uphold the state constitution. So, I mean, my basic notion is that people should, certainly within the bounds of law, get in the face of state legislators and remind them of the state constitutional voting rights that they swore generally on a Bible to uphold.
No, I think that's fascinating. Dr. Amos, what do you have? What are your suggestions?
So there's the lobbying your members of the state legislature. Another angle you can take is draw your own maps. The tools in the past 10 years have gotten much easier to use. The web apps now, instead of having to purchase specialized software. So there's like Dave's redistricting app. That's davesredistricting.org. There's a little bit of a learning curve there, but what district do you want to see, and what do fair districts look like to you? We've seen in other court cases, the fact that the public had drawn maps, submitted them to the legislature, and the legislature had seen them, that was evidence that they knew better maps existed. One of the things legislature tried to pull is, oh, there's so many maps we could have drawn, we just didn't know fairer maps existed. We thought this was the best possible. And if you show them this map, no, look at this was fair. You saw this, we know you saw this. That literally in Florida was kind of the tipping point where they could prove that they had seen these maps and chose to draw a gerrymander instead. So again, there's a little bit of a learning curve there, but it might be worth getting into that side of things.
I can imagine, like, that's a fun Friday night activity. We're inside anyways, like, we're almost there. So, like, hang out inside, draw a couple of maps. I mean, you could have, like, a party, like a map party, like, where everybody all over the place and submit a map, and everybody gets to decide which one they like best and submit a bunch.
It doesn't even have to be the entire state. If you think you know what Wichita breaks up as, that you can submit that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is fantastic. That's super cool. We'll work on getting some of those links available for you all, so that you kind of know what's out there, so that you can do that too. We've got a question from Martha Pint here, so it's going to pop up on our screen. Dr. Amos, what are your thoughts on whether Kansas will ever be able to secure a nonpartisan redistricting committee? We know that our legislature is more tipped towards one partisan side. So what is our possibilities for this? And Mr. Millman, you are welcome to kind of weigh in at any point if you know of ways that we can advocate for that.
I guess I would say it's obviously an uphill battle if we want to go through normal legislative process to put this in place. Yeah, so Republicans have a veto-proof majority. It's not in their interest to give up that power, especially when it comes to the congressional side. They're not going to want Sharice Davids to have a seat. So, yeah, and unfortunately, we don't have some of the same tools as other states. California and Arizona have independent commissions. Michigan just got one, but they were able to use direct democracy tools we just don't have in Kansas. So it's not, it's. I don't know if Robert, if you have.
Well, I back to my theme of keeping it simple. The whole process, they really try to hide the process. And in the longer version of this film, I have an interview with these people who, it was a federal case where they forced the legislative defendants to turn over the redistricting data. The case was Ager. This was the first and so far only time that legislative defendants have been forced to turn over the data. They keep it secret. So my point would be a thing that would be really helpful, and you sort of squeeze them into an indefensible position. Say, okay, you want to draw the maps, draw them in public. What are you hiding? Just insist on sunshine as a disinfectant. It seems like you're not telling them to give up their power. You're saying you have to do it in public. What are you hiding? If they have to, and I don't mean having public events where you can submit letters and have opinions actually show the variations in the maps, actual map drawing. Just simply insist that it be public, because then they can't hide. They own it.
That's a really unique thing too. So now we're going to have a map drawing party where you also call your legislature and you have them do it publicly too. We're going to have all together as a state, just have one big map drawing party. I think this is, I'll get on this. We'll start this next week. Just kidding.
For what it's worth, I have an idea I'll just present to you as a way, because we are in times of COVID. So I came up with this sort of, it's just a simple piece of paper that has the address. It has a statement relative to the state, and then it has a simple sort of fill in the blanks sign thing. It's just a piece of paper that anyone could print. You fold it, you put a stamp on it, and you send it to them. And it's something that you could organize from any home, and ink an actual analog signature on a piece of paper is worth 1,000 clicks.
That's super. I remember I feel very fortunate that I get to go advocate in DC almost every year. The past couple of years obviously has been from here calling into DC, but that's one thing that they say is if you write us something, when it comes on their list, like, we're going to take that into account more because we have less to work through than 50 million of the same emails or 50 million of the same text messages or 50, depending on the phone calls. Phone calls are also they're not as prevalent. And so that's also something they said that it's when somebody does that, like, whoa, hey, this kind of like rocked our boat a little bit.
I think that there is a nearly magical power to a signed document that you actually analog, put ink on a piece of paper, and send it to your representative. I think that there's a power to it. It took a long time to get this awful, and it's not going to be fixed right away. If I could bloviate a little bit longer, not to in any way undermine or minimize the awfulness of slavery, but the fact is that the simple words of all men are created equal and we the people were just ignored until enough people said, no, the words mean something.
And that's very true. I think we have to assign that meaning definitely to those things in our Constitution and saying this is important to us. Okay, so Dr. Amos, I have a question for you. And I know you do a lot of work around thinking about and working through how people vote and kind of, we get these districts and then the voting is a part of it. How does this redistricting impact our political environment? Like, does it create more political polarization? Does it create more distrust in our political system? What things kind of come about when we see big changes in gerrymandering kind of effects from things?
Yes, so obviously polarization has increased past 20, 30 years to levels we're talking the Civil War, these levels of partisan polarization. It's actually a matter of debate how much gerrymandering contributes to that. It's probably a little bit, but it's not the defining feature. It's certainly one of the problems is when you shake up a district, like if somebody now has a new incumbent, that will affect turnout. So if you remove competition from the equation, if just districts are drawn to be safe, and which Mr. Millman went through that process in the video. Some districts are packed, way overpacked for one party, and then the others are drawn, not packed, but still to be safe. So the end result is a reduced competition everywhere. We don't get those 5-5 dime penny districts like he was showing. So that definitely is a negative. A legislator thinking they own a seat is never a good thing. In worst cases, Wisconsin went to the Supreme Court a couple of years ago with this, where, Democrats would win the statewide vote in some cases, Republicans would win it, and no matter what, Republicans had over 60% of the seats. That's just like a breakdown of democracy. That's, we definitionally not a democracy. And that can lead to problems with, how do Democrats and Republicans behave in the legislature? If they know they can never be removed from the majority, again, just a breakdown of values.
This is I just feel really inspired after this. What are your guys' any questions also? We haven't had many questions from our audience. Usually we get some, but I think people are just like processing all of this information and things will come to them later. But what are your final thoughts? What are some things to leave us with of things that we should look into or we should know more about, or something that you're passionate about that you want to share with us, or anything that your final kind of thoughts on this evening?
The opening segment of the pennies and dimes, I'm making that available to anyone who wants to use it. I'll provide a downloadable link. Sometimes I cringe at looking at myself on camera, but I think I've created a demonstration that is unique, and a lot of otherwise smart people either don't understand it or don't want to understand it. But I think once you see it, you can't unsee it.
That's very true. How often, and everybody's brain works differently. So having having this unique analogy, I think, is so helpful for so many of our, so many people that are a part of our organization and also just want to know more. That link and that video will be available in the coming weeks. We have it scheduled out so that things aren't as clustered. And so that way you guys will everybody watching and people that weren't able to come meet with us today will have access to that so that you will be able to watch it, and it'll be here on our YouTube as well as on our Facebook. Dr. Amos, go for it. If
I can share an anecdotal story. A friend of mine that I've known since grade school, a smart guy, has a master's degree in chemistry. So he had to have taken a fair amount of math to get to chemistry. He didn't understand it until he saw that piece. So don't think that otherwise smart people understand it. It's a simple but nonetheless abstract math concept.
It's definitely something that it's almost like a word problem where you're like have to figure out all the pieces, and you have to kind of figure out like, okay, what am I getting out of all of this, and coming in and figuring out what's fair and unfair, as well as what is seen as also what could be fair but not be representative, and all these different things. There's many components, and so that will be available, and we're so thankful that you have such a unique way to show that. Dr. Amos, what do you want to leave us with?
Yeah, so I think when people understand the issue, and videos like Robert's putting out are great tools to understand it. I think once people understand it, there's not people who say, oh, that makes sense, let's keep doing that. That's not a natural reaction. So, in states where it gets put on the ballot, anti-redistricting or anti-gerrymandering legislation, it tends to do very well. The issue is that it happens once every 10 years. So it's difficult for it to stay in the front of people's mind. And, once it's done, are you going to vote out a representative because they voted for a gerrymander? Well, if we keep the pressure on, potentially, we can make it an issue, but it's something that, groups like the League of Women Voters are at the forefront of this across the country. They've been great on this. It's partly a job of education, and again, movies like this do a great job of doing that.
If I could add one more thing, it's also a job of trying to change the conversation away from us versus them, party to party, to the whole nature of your vote meaning something, and that the nature of the problem is that has shifted politicians' loyalty away from the voters to their political party, and that's bad.
And it definitely, I think that's a great way to put it, that this is truly a nonpartisan issue. This is truly an opportunity for all of us to have, it's a way for our democracy to stay sustained over many years, to make sure that we're having all voices heard and true democracy in that. And I think it's a reminder that we all believe in, if we all believe in democracy, this should be something that we all are fighting for, no matter who you affiliate with or don't affiliate with, or, and not an us versus them, but truly a collective fight. Well, I want to thank you both. Both of you are incredibly brilliant minds that have brought a lot to our world. We will make sure that people have opportunities to contact you, so that we will put your emails into our follow-up on all of this. But we are just so thankful that you both are here and that you have been a part of this discussion. So thank you both so much.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Brian.
So I have one last thing to share with you all before we leave this evening. What we have is we have a couple of items that we want to share about. Sorry, I'm getting my share screen going. So that way you guys will all see these opportunities. So Governor Kelly has vetoed some bills this past week. All of these are opportunities for, and I'm going to go back to this. So these are the bills, but I want to talk about what our call to action is. A call for League of Women Voters. We have asked the legislature to leave the vetoes in place and instead work on passing a balanced budget that fully funds education invest in Kansas. And this is from the League of Women Voters from the state of Kansas. We also, since we have a stance on the of Medicaid expansion and are in favor of Medicaid expansion as a part of our national league and our state league solutions for the legislature, we would like the passing of the Medicaid expansion bill. Here are ways for you to connect with your state representative and senator. Convey your wishes that they sustain a governor's veto. You can look them up at KSLEG or LEG, look up lookup.org. We will also be posting this in the comments, so if you wanted to be able to just click and look up from there. Like we stated earlier, having an opportunity where you're able to write a letter or have a phone call that is not necessarily as scripted, it is something that goes a long way. But any sort of email or text message or however you would like to interact with your legislator is still extremely important. So again, here are the bills that we would like for you guys for us to have an advocacy action moment this week, and then sustain these vetoes. So I'm going to stop sharing this, and we're going to come back to our video here. I had a great question on here. How do we get the film to use with congregations and organizations? So to this film, we were able to utilize because of our, because we're a part of a fund and paid for the rights to be able to use this for our YouTube. As you all will see, the YouTube video that will be posted afterwards will include a short trailer. We will be able to put that in the comments, and then as well as in our posting of this video separately later, we will include information to contact Mr. Millman. As well as you can always go to the website lineinthestreet.com to be able to learn more and be able to connect more about opportunities. But this is a great opportunity there. The trailer will also be available. So if you want to show a snippet for a small amount of time, that is an opportunity that you can use to entice people as well. So finally, this is just the beginning of the People Powered Fair Maps Week for the League of Women Voters Kansas. With that, we have events throughout the week, with one highlighting this Thursday that is put on by the League of Women Voters for the state of Kansas around People Powered Fair Maps. So please look at our Facebook and look at that schedule and attend these events so that we have a lot of opportunity to be educated so that we can reach out to our legislature. Thank you so much for attending tonight. Again, I will put these in the comments so that you guys are able to access them, as well as in our future posts, you'll be able to connect with them. Thank you so much for being with us this evening, and we will talk to you all soon. Also, oh my gosh, I almost forgot. One last thing. Our next meeting will be our annual meeting, which will take place on May 24th. That meeting will be a lot of celebration and will be here on YouTube as well as on Facebook, as well as we will have a business portion for members only at that point in time to just take care of some business. So if you are interested in being in both of those sessions, please make sure that you're a member of the League of Women Voters Wichita Metro, or you can just attend our celebration afterwards as well. Thank you so much and have a great evening.